This is one of the sections from our Western Saddle Fit Well Beyond the Basics video. You can check it out on westernsaddlefit.com. But because this topic is so important, we decided to release it as a short video on its own.
The first of our basic principles is position, and we're going to keep coming back to it all the way through the video because it is so important. But why is it so important? Because saddle fit is all about shape, getting the shape of the tree to match the shape of the horse, with allowances built in for movement, of course. And the shape of the horse is different at different places on his back. So if you have the tree built to match the shape in one area, then it definitely won't match the shape if it's placed somewhere else. So the saddle has to be placed where it was designed to be put if it's actually going to fit the horse. This leads you to the question, where should the saddle be designed to fit? And there's a lot of different ideas and opinions on that. Let's look at some anatomy and some actual data to help us decide. This is the left scapula or shoulder blade of a horse. So he's heading that direction. This is the spine of the scapula, which you can usually see on the horse actually as a line up and down the shoulder. And in life, there's a big cartilage cap on top that's also part of it. Something to be aware of with horses, and most of our domestic animals, is they don't have a collarbone. There's nothing holding the shoulder in place relative to the body. It's strictly muscle holding it on. This means that the shoulder blade will move relative to the body of the horse. It goes up and down. As the horse puts weight on it, it pushes the shoulder blade up, and then when they let the weight off, it drops down a little bit again. This is an exaggerated motion compared to what happens in real life, but it gives you an idea. The shoulder blade also rotates. As the horse reaches forward with his leg, it'll rotate back. And then as the horse moves forward over his leg, it becomes more upright, they pick the foot up, and it rotates back again. The other movement they have, because there's nothing holding it out from the body specifically, is that it can actually move relative to the body wall, and it usually does that by tilting back and forth a bit. Now, because it's not directly connected to the body, and nothing that sticks the skin to it either, the shoulder blade moves in between the body wall and the skin to a certain extent. This makes it really difficult to research, and to my knowledge, there has been no research done to date that gives us the exact way the shoulder blade moves in the different gaits of the horse. So here's a video of a horse walking. Look for the shoulder blade. Watch to see how much you can see of it at different phases of the stride. Here, the hoof is just touching down, so the scapula is rotated as far back as it can go. What do you see of it at this point? Remember, there's no weight on the hoof right now. Watch as the horse moves forward over the placed leg. Notice how you can see the scapula much better as it carries more weight. Here it is mid-stride, with the leg straight up and down, and moving on as the leg moves back relative to the horse. Here we are just before the toe is lifted off the ground. See how far the scapula protrudes from the body. This is the time when the shoulder blade is the most vertical. And here is toe off. The scapula disappears. When there's no weight on the leg, there's nothing pushing the scapula up or away from the body. You don't see it. The body wall looks smooth. So now the horse is swinging their leg forward without any weight on it. Can you see the shoulder blade? This is when the shoulder blade is rotating backwards, the time everybody's worried about it hitting the saddle. Without any weight on it, it's smooth with the body until it touches down again and starts protruding as there's weight on the leg. So with all that as background, where do we want the saddle to sit on the horse? There's a number of opinions. The majority opinion, which we agree with, is that the front of the bar tip should be right behind the shoulder blade of the horse. But we're going to show you the other options first, with data, so that by the time you get to the one that we recommend, you'll understand why we say this is the proper position of a Western saddle. A very few people say that they want the saddle to sit right on top of the shoulder blade so the front leg carries some of the weight of the rider. We're going to show you some pressure mat data to show you why this is really not a good idea and why it's going to harm your horse. Here's a pressure mat. It's an electronic device that measures the pressure under each of those sensor areas and sends it back to a computer so we can see what level of pressure is under each area. Here's what a readout from the mat looks like. You'll notice that there's a split at the front of the mat to allow room for the withers, so we don't have readings in that area. The pressure gradient is quickly told via the colors. Dark blue has no pressure on it. Then it goes from the gray through the blues, greens, and yellows before the sensors max out in red. This scan also demonstrates some of the limitations of the mat. Because it's a flat, non-stretchy mat on a curved surface, it can get folds in it, which create high pressures on the sensors. So the areas inside the red circles are artifacts created by folds in the mat, not high pressures due to the saddle. As well, one whole row of sensors was not reading when we took these scans, so that dark blue line is also an artifact. Such is technology. But the areas to concentrate on for the purposes here are where the arrows are pointing, which is the area up front under the front bar pads. For these tests, we had the saddle up on the shoulder blades. This positioning may look quite normal to many people, as saddles are commonly placed this far forward, but it is up on the shoulder blades. I apologize for the quality of the pictures, but this is what comes off the program from the pressure mat so that we can match the video of the horse moving with the pressures underneath at this precise moment. The picture of the readout here is positioned just like it is on the horse. Front to the front of the horse and left and right, also matching the left and right of the horse. We'll make it a bit bigger so you can see it better. And for simplicity's sake, we'll just look at the left shoulder. Though if you want, we can go back later and see that the right shoulder has the same kind of readings as the left shoulder does. So here, the horse has just touched his foot down to the ground. You can't see the shoulder blade because it's covered by the saddle, but here is the horse at the same phase of the stride. The shoulder blade is still rotated quite far back, but you can have a hard time seeing the back of it. It's very smooth with the body. Now check the pressure mat. Note that there's almost no pressure between the front bar pad and the shoulder because the horse is not yet carrying very much weight on the foot. And without weight on the foot, there is no pressure upward on the shoulder blade pushing it against the bar, causing pressure. But there is contact behind the shoulder blade where the body is carrying the weight of the rider and saddle. As the horse moves forward, she carries more weight on the foot. You can see the top of the shoulder blade protruding more, and you can start to see the back of it. Note that you're now getting pressure between the saddle and the shoulder, but there is still good contact in the center of the saddle. Here we are at mid-stance. The right front leg is just coming past the left, which is pretty much vertical. You are clearly seeing the back of the shoulder blade now, as the horse is carrying more weight on that leg because the other front foot is off the ground. And as the shoulder blade protrudes more, the pressure increases between the shoulder and the saddle. You can see the difference in the colors. You'll also notice that as the shoulder blade carries more weight, there's less contact in the center of the saddle. And continuing to move forward, the horse's body is further forward over the leg. The back of the shoulder blade is much more visible as it sticks out farther from the body, and the pressures are increasing over the shoulder blade. You can see that there's minimal pressure now behind the shoulder blade. The saddle is bridging, carrying the weight on the front bar pad on top of the protruding shoulder blade, and the back bar pad, with not a lot in the middle. Continuing forward, her right leg is now reaching forward, and more of the body weight is being carried on the left as it moves back relative to the horse. The shoulder blade's only a bit more obvious than it was in the last picture, but the pressures have increased substantially over it. And here we are, just before liftoff. You can see how far that shoulder blade is protruding from the body. There's quite a gap between it and the body behind it. And that's what you see on the pressure mat. Maxed out pressures where the saddle is sitting right on top of the shoulder blade, and then almost nothing behind it until you get to the back bar pad. And then we get to liftoff. When the weight comes off the leg, the shoulder blade smooths out with the body, and the pressure over the shoulder blade disappears. The muscle is no longer being compressed between the bar of the saddle tree and the bone of the shoulder blade, and you can see that the center of the saddle is once again starting to have contact with the saddle tree and support the rider's weight. So with this kind of data, you can see that putting the saddle on the shoulder blades is going to create high pressure with every step, every time there's weight on that leg. And those high pressures on the shoulder blade are what damages the muscle, creating a lump over the back of the shoulder blade and atrophy of the muscle behind it. These pressures cause pain in the short run, and in the long run, they cause this kind of damage. Another theory is that you want to put the saddle at least 2 inches behind the shoulder blade. The theory behind that is so that as the shoulder blade rotates back, it doesn't hit the front of the bar. This is also the idea behind having a lot of flare on the front of the bar, so there's room for that shoulder blade to rotate underneath it. The need for this is often demonstrated by picking up the front leg and pulling it forward, showing how far the shoulder blade can move back. And when you do this, forcing the shoulder blade upward and backward, it does protrude from the body and it can rotate a long ways back. But is this what happens when the horse lifts his leg? Looking at a horse walking, it's clear that it doesn't. Without weight on the leg, the scapula is very smooth with the body, and it doesn't reach the limits of its range of motion as when the demonstration is done. And when you look at the pressure mat data, there's no pressure between the scapula and the bar when the leg is moving forward, unweighted. Here is the scan again from right after the horse lifts his foot from the ground. The shoulder is smooth with the body, and there's no pressure under the front bar pad. As the horse starts to reach forward, the shoulder is still smooth with the body, and there's no pressure under or against the front of the saddle tree. And here, at almost full natural extension, the scapula is almost invisible, blending in with the body, and there's no pressure on the front of the bar. At this point in the stride, you can see that the middle of the saddle is carrying the majority of the rider's weight on this side, and the front has no issues at all. So the whole idea of needing to somehow create room for the shoulder to rotate into is just not true for Western saddles. They don't need to be placed a few inches back of the shoulder blade, and we'll show you later why the idea of flaring out the bar tips can also be harmful. Another, even less common idea is that you have so much flare on the front of the bar that it can actually sit over the shoulder blade and yet not have contact with it. The idea behind this one is that you want to have the rider sitting further forward, despite the fact that they have a fork on their saddle and enough bar to hold it up. We haven't had the opportunity to pressure test a saddle made with this theory, but in looking at how far out the shoulder blade protrudes at times and how much of a gap it creates behind it, we can't see there being a way of having contact anywhere close behind the shoulder blade without contacting and therefore putting pressure on the top of it too. In playing with trees with lots of rock and flare, no matter how we positioned them, they would still have pressure on the shoulder blade if positioned over top of it. But until there's test results on saddles built with this theory that are made public, we'll have to leave it as a question mark. The last opinion on where the saddle should be relative to the shoulder blade is that the front of the bar tip should be right behind the shoulder blade of the horse.
I feel for it over the horse's shoulder, find the back of the shoulder blade. Tree, front of the bar needs to fit in right at the back of the shoulder blade. So you want to check and feel for the back of the shoulder blade. You want to check and feel for the front of the bar tips and make sure that saddle's exactly where it belongs on that horse, that those places match.
Why are we convinced that this is the proper place to position your saddle? Here's some pictures of a horse whose owner was doing her absolute best to make her comfortable. Veterinary care, chiropractic, massage, the whole bit. This horse would try to bite you when she was being saddled, she'd duck out from underneath you when you dismounted, even petting over her shoulder blades gave a painful reaction. And she had the lump and hollow configuration on and behind her shoulder blades. So we tested the saddle. When the owner saddled up, she put the saddle right up on top the shoulder blades, because she didn't know any different. The mat wasn't far enough forward to pick up all the pressures over the shoulder blade, but based on what you've seen in the previous scans and what you can see here, you can imagine how big a red area there would have been there. Then we explained the proper position to the owner, front of the bar tip, behind the back of the shoulder blade. We moved the saddle back into the right position and tested again, and here's the results. Same horse, same saddle, same rider, a few minutes later. Low pressures all the way through, and the horse moved differently. The owner couldn't believe that in all she'd gone through with this horse, no one had told her that it was where she was positioning the saddle that was causing the issues with her horse, both behavior and physical. This is why having your saddle positioned correctly, with the front of the bar tip just behind the shoulder blade on your horse, is so important.
Please check out westernsaddlefit.com for information on our 67-minute video, which is called Western Saddle Fit: The Basics, as well as Western Saddle Fit Well Beyond the Basics, which this section is taken from.